Just stop it. Get some help. Hello and welcome to the Rotten Girl Book Club channel. I am your resident Rotten Girl, Emily, and I'm here to talk today about the situation with Love in Deep Space, which is just really rocking the world of otome games and gacha games, and also my world personally. I had to talk about it with my therapist today. It's a problem. Okay, so if you're watching this video, you know that something is going on, you want to know more about it, so I'm just going to dive right in. Love in Deep Space is an otome narrative-driven game marketed towards women. There are 5 main love interests that we're introduced to over the course of the story. They are romanceable. There's a lot of other little things that are involved. It's a super fun game. It's great. And each of the love interests have dedicated storylines and complex paths. It is a gacha game, so every month they release memory cards that players can pull for. So there are dedicated resources like diamonds and money that people put towards this game. Now, like I said, there are 5 main love interests. Originally, there were 3. The game launched in 2024 with 3. Gradually, 2 more were added over like the next year and a half. Now, they've been advertising a 6th love interest for months. I picked this game up again in December 2025 after dropping it in 2024 because I had no idea what was going on. And I picked it up for the banner. You know the one. You know the one, the Royal Space Opera one. Oh yeah, I picked up the game for that. Anyway, that 6th love interest was being advertised in the app in December. So, and I think it was probably there before, but it's been like at least 6 months that we have been known that this love interest was coming, right? So they finally dropped his trailer in mid-June.
That's not very nice. That you can
see. And can I just personally say,
I'm gonna come. Oh.
I'm sorry. Anyway, they dropped his trailer. Huge controversy. You have people who love him, you have people who hate it, and eventually what happened is that Infold canceled his launch. No more Valko, no more Wolfie boy.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
He's gone, and they also announced that they would not be adding any more love interest to the game ever. Bonkers. And also sad for me personally because I'm a slut and I want
I guess what's a slut? Always a slut.
I want more than 5 boyfriends. Okay?
What is the charge? Eating a meal? A succulent Chinese meal?
So why would they cancel him? And also, who is he? He is a 26-year-old hot nerd with a really big sword, which I'm a really big fan of. He's introduced as possibly an executive or researcher at an entity which is a major antagonist of the game, a company called Ever. He appears to also be a wolf shifter, and like several of the love interests, particularly Silas, and I put Raphael in this category as well. He's initially kind of adversarial to the MC. But, you know, they grow. It's fine. And again, we don't really know his full storyline or his full background. This is just stuff that we've gleaned from his launch trailers. The protests against Valko began among his Chinese fan base primarily and involved a number of issues that really do range in complexity and also specificity to China versus like global feelings about the whole thing. And I'm going to get into all of them, and I'm going to try to be as thorough and kind as I can. Do you have anything to say to the people about Valko? She likes him. Oh, he's so cute, Jewel. Bye. Oh. Bye. Forgot what I was saying. This is not going to be an objective review. I firmly believe that they should not have canceled Valko. I think it was incredibly premature, short-sighted, and also problematic. Not just because I personally thought he was interesting and wanted to see him in my game. I think that there are bigger issues at play here. And I think it was fucked up. So if you thought this was going to be objective, it's not. I do have an opinion, and I will be giving my opinion while I am telling you these things. And I'm going to be thorough and I'm going to be informative, but I will also be opinionated. So you should know that. First, among many of the issues that people opponents of Valko have with Valko is really more a general one that adding a sixth love interest goes against their interest personally because it makes it more difficult for them to pull for their mains, and it also takes away resources that the company might put towards their mains for other things like merch or advertisements or whatever. And it would like slow down the rotation of when they get new stuff for their main love interest, right? And this is not necessarily incorrect. They're not really wrong for feeling this way. Lads is a gotcha game. There's only a set percentage chance of you pulling a card in memory that you want from a bucket of cards with all of the love interests in them. So if you have a 20% chance of pulling your main when there are 5 of them, now that there are 6, let's say you have a 17-ish% chance. I don't do math, but it's less than 20% now, right? And because it's a gotcha game, people are putting in their time to grind for diamonds, which is an in-game currency to pay to pull cards, or your own legitimate money. I have spent hundreds of dollars on this game. I'm not a VIP yet. One day I will be. But like that's not a non-issue. Um, but it is and it's always been a gotcha game and an Otome game. It's normal for them to have more than one, and especially on mobile games, it's not necessarily unusual to add more love interest. Um, so I'm just kind of it's an issue, but it's also for me like a non-issue. But I recognize it's an issue for other people. But anyway, the other more generic issue that people have with adding a sixth love interest is that the main story of the game hasn't been updated in over a year. I think people were saying it's been like 500 days, um, which like wow wow wee woo. But there have been other updates, of course, not to the main storyline, but there are other updates to the stories and to the game generally. And it's worth noting that all of the stories are intertwined. So any update at all either pushes the main storyline forward in the background or it adds more dimension to it. Um, so I don't agree. I don't agree that that's a reason to cancel a love interest. Also, they already fucking made him, you guys. He's already there. That's gonna take even longer to rework the main story now that he's not in it anymore. Hello? Certain demographics of the fan base also didn't like Valko's appearance. He was too buff, too tan, too Western. Some people even described him as vulgar, which I thought was crazy. That's a crazy choice of words. I don't think I've ever called someone vulgar in my whole life. Cause wow. But I think this is just really an example of bigotry and racism being an issue among the fan base. Because colorism is racism, and let's be honest, he has a very light tan. So this is an issue, right? This is highlighting an actual issue within the fan base, but is not an issue for Infold so much as it's an issue for people who can't cope, right?
Stop it. Get some help.
These are the complaints that I would consider the more general ones. I might even call them more benign. Like, they're not the really dark and gritty ones that start to make this issue more complex and that have started to make it confusing for people who don't speak Mandarin. People like me. So I'm going to try to give a best as I can an understanding of what I know is going on about these other issues, which are primarily involving Chinese history and also some current events. So let's start with the big one, Unit 731. This next part of the video is going to be a lot of historical information, and I trigger warning for things like genocide, human mutilation, torture, the death of children in wartime, etc. Things that you might just imagine happening during a horrible war. So if you are not interested in going more in depth about that, or you might find that you're sensitive to those things, you should skip ahead to the timestamp that I'm going to put on the screen right now. And I don't, this needs to be said because people are the way that they are, but I find sometimes that when people talk about sensitive subjects, such as things that a nation may have done during a war, that there can be some sensitivity, whether people are offended that it's being brought up or people are being very condemning towards those nations. And I don't think that's necessary in my comment section. That's not what this section of the video is about, so please do not do that. If I see that happening, I will delete those comments. Thanks. Unit 731 was a unit of the Japanese Imperial Army in World War II. And if you're not familiar with World War II history in the Asian arena, Japan invaded northern China while China was experiencing a political transition from a monarchy with their emperor to a republic with the Nationalist Party, which was being challenged by the Chinese Communist Party, or the CCP. So they had their own internal civil turmoil going on when Japan invaded northern China. Now, they blazed through northern China and they instituted their three alls policy in response to successful guerrilla war tactics by soldiers within the CCP, which had teamed up with the Nationalist Party. Good job, guys. Following the CCP's attempt to attack Japanese resources like railroads and mines, Japan instituted this three alls policy, and I wanna note that they deny that they had this policy. So if there's anybody who's like that didn't happen, it's because there's denial going on. But the objective history is that this policy was the kill all, loot all, burn all policy. They committed extreme atrocities. They massacred villages, they burned fields, they caused forced starvation, they murdered and raped. Not even infants were spared from the horrible things that they were committing during this wartime campaign. Now, Unit 731 was a military unit with a facility in northern China in the territory that Japan had already conquered. They conducted inhumane experiments on Chinese civilians as well as others, including Russians and Koreans. Their research was on biological and chemical warfare. To accomplish this research, they infected prisoners with deadly diseases, they harvested their organs, they amputated their limbs, they exposed them to chemical agents and explosives, they tested them in new medical contraptions like hyperbaric chambers, which we now use to treat carbon monoxide poisoning. And they would remove their organs while they were alive. Quite frankly, the things that they did there were very reminiscent of what the Nazis did to the Jews and to disabled people in their own experiments. Really, really horrible things. The next day, I started looking into this more to find resources and things to put on the screen to share with you guys. And I found a really interesting documentary, which I am going to link below. It's free on YouTube. You should definitely watch it. But notably, I wanted to clarify that the activities of Unit 731 were not localized only to their prisoners. They also conducted experiments on the Chinese population within that region, including biological and germ warfare. A former member of Unit 731 spoke to the media about it. He was 14 years old when he was assigned to work at the facility as a lab technician, and he recalled seeing heads and body parts in jars within the main building. It was a complex of buildings, including a dissected belly with a fetus inside. Now, when they shut down the facility, they told him to burn the bodies in the pit, and they gave him a pistol and a cyanide pill to use on himself in case he got caught while escaping back to Japan. It's estimated that 14,000 people died in these experiments as victims. There are no known survivors. There's also no official confirmation of their deaths. We don't have their bodies. There have been hundreds of bones that have been found in that region that people suspect are related to Unit 731, but there's just no official confirmation, which I think must be really hard. And Japan has also never acknowledged this. Now, after World War II, and this is just fun. Fun is crazy. I like history. I think it's interesting, so I'm telling you maybe a little bit more than you need to know about this, but I think it's interesting and important context. After World War II, only 12 members of Unit 731 were officially tried in any war tribunals. After World War II, there were kind of two separate things going on at the same time. On one side, you had the USSR doing their thing, and on the other side, you had the United States and the League of Nations, which then became the UN, doing their thing. And they had separate tribunals. The ones that the US and the League of Nations were doing were the Tokyo trials, very big. The USSR had their own, where they tried the members of Unit 731. Now, unfortunately, um, these people rumoredly, supposedly, very likely, got very light sentences. They went on to become pharmaceutical executives and medical professors. The United States didn't prosecute any of them in their tribunals, and they were the ones kind of leading the show in this region of the world following World War II. Um, they didn't prosecute any of them. In fact, they granted immunity to many of their leaders in exchange for their research and information that they had discovered while conducting their inhumane experiments and torture, which is disgusting. So it makes sense that people in China would be very sensitive about any sort of reference to Unit 731 that's not being handled with the appropriate care and seriousness that it deserves. What does this have to do with Valko? Not a lot, actually. There are parts of the story they're not in the main story. They're like extra information that you can learn through just like really, really squished paragraphs. I find them difficult to read because they're so small. But they're just descriptions of events or characters in the story from the perspective of other people to give you more context. And within those stories, there is a mention of 731. In A World Underneath, chapter 25, it says, or used to say in the Chinese servers, this has actually changed, but it was labeled test record A0731, and then it went on to describe experiments that were conducted on one of the main love interests, Xavier, and his brother Isaiah. And again, I think that's been changed now on the Chinese servers. It's not like that anymore. But more importantly, the attribution of that number to Valko is a smear, and it's just incorrect. And unfortunately, it was spread and propagandized to like further support why he should be taken down, when in fact it had absolutely nothing to do with him. What it is the reference to 731 itself is the issue. And I understand that it's a sensitive topic and probably not a good number to pick, but it was changed, so that's good. But I also think it's important to remember that Love and New Space is a dark game. The main storyline involves themes of genocide, murder, terrorism, deaths of entire planets, and I think human sacrifice, and human experimentation beyond what's described in the story about Xavier and Isaiah within that document. Caleb, one of the main love interests, was experimented on for years. He has an implant in him to help the military control him better. Raphael, another love interest, is one of the only survivors of a race of people called Lemurians, and he spent years killing people responsible for the genocide of his people. He is a terrorist. The game is very dark. It handles dark topics. It's not just a super fluffy little, this is a smut game for ladies. It has nuance, it has complexities, and it talks about really dark things. So the fact that there's the human experimentation part of this game has been in it since the beginning. So that's not the issue. The issue was the number, and the number was taken out, and the number has nothing to do with Valko. Besides this, Valko, we believe, it appears from his trailer, that he's a researcher and executive of Ever, which is the company I mentioned at the beginning. They're responsible for the experiments on Caleb and the Lemurians and other bad things. But without knowing the entire story or even the direction of it, there's just no way to legitimately villainize Valko as being a part of Ever when we don't even know exactly how his storyline is going to play out. It's extremely premature to say that we shouldn't have a character with those associations and ties within our game or as a romanceable option. We just don't know. And each of the love interests has a dark past. They have morally gray parts of their personalities and things that they themselves have done. These characters are important and we like them because they have nuance. And that's part of, we don't get that anymore with Valko, because the assumption is that he's all bad and we should never have villains in our stories, and that's just not true. I also, and this is just like my personal theory, is that Valko, a wolf shifter, right? I find it hard to imagine that ever wouldn't experiment on a wolf shifter if they're also experimenting on mermaids. There's absolutely a chance that Valko himself could be a victim of the same people that victimized our other love interests. And so to pull him out because of his association to them, I think is doesn't make any sense to me. And I also think like I don't get it. I just don't get it. It just feels extremely hypocritical to me. Like the fact that like Caleb is in the military and does bad things in the military. I mean, he has an implant and that like helps him do it because it like makes him cold and turns off his emotions or whatever. But like we literally watched him shoot someone in the head. Do you guys remember that? Do you remember when he shot someone in the head? Like, hello? Um, I don't get it. Some people have also alleged that, Valko is like anti-woman, he's dangerous to women, he's problematic for women, he's anti-feminist, blah, 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 because of some of the things that we saw in his trailer, specifically the fact that he looks like he broke into the MC's house through her balcony. And also he has a line that references bathing in a pot. As to breaking into her house, again, we just don't know any of the details of the story. There's just no way for us to definitively know that he did that or why he did that. Moreover, other love interests have done worse, like drugging the MC and locking her in a room to keep her out of danger, even though she really wanted to go out and do her thing because she's a badass. Do you guys remember when Caleb drugged her and locked her in a room? Like, I love you, Caleb. I love him. He's my main, but guys, I don't get it. It's funny. It's funny because it doesn't make sense. As to like the bathing in the pot, people are associating this with a gruesome murder of a Chinese woman whose body parts were found in a soup pot. And I really, as horrible as that is, I think it's a stretch to associate that in any way with a line about bathing in a pot. Because we should remember that Valko is a wolf. So this is more likely in reference to a fairy tale like Little Red Riding Hood or maybe The Wolf and the Three Little Pigs because he wants to eat her. Like there's also a version of Little Red Riding Hood where she lures the wolf to his death with a soup of sausages, a sausage soup. Sausage soup. Wow. Sausage soup. And he drowns in it. So, like, what are you talking about? It's like crazy to me to think that a company the size of Infold and associated slash probably owned by Paper Games would do something so stupid as to callously make reference to a gruesome murder in their game that mostly women play. A murder of a woman in a game that mostly women play? Like, are you actually dumb? I'm sorry, this one really just gets me. This one gets my fucking goat because are you stupid? I can't even. I literally. Just stop it. Get some help. Anyway, that one's crazy. Speaking more on current events, I've also heard that the All China Women's Federation got involved behind the scenes, politically putting pressure on Infold to remove Valko. And the fear is that the pressure will mount to just getting rid of the game entirely. But I haven't found any official statements about this, which could be because I'm in the US, so my search results could be filtered to filter out anything published by like Chinese media or the Chinese government. That's totally a possibility. But despite all my research, I have yet to find that. And I can access the official Chinese government website. So I don't believe that it's filtered out. I just don't think that this is like news that anybody can actually ever know. And people are just making stuff up. But why would they make this up? Why is this even relevant? I'll explain. So, the All China Women's Federation, or the ACWF, was established following World War II with the goals of establishing a communist China and promoting the status of women. They actually worked alongside the CCP to establish communism. They were an important part of the CCP, and then they kind of got pushed off to the sidelines once communism was like firmly rooted. And then they, started kind of doing their own stuff on the side, but they really lost a lot of their like fingers in the pie type of power that they had initially. They spent decades trying to promote women's rights in China. And in 2023, they changed their goal to foster a new type of marriage and childbearing culture to consolidate the family foundation for Chinese style modernization, which is a lot of words to say that they want women to get married and have babies. That's a lot of words to say the government needs you to get married to a man and make babies.
Are you kidding me?
But what does this have to do with love and deep space? The theory is that games like LAD's Atome games are contributing to declining marriage rates and childbirth rates in China, which would instigate the government into trying to address the situation by doing whatever they can to promote childbirth, including getting rid of things that might be distracting or detracting from that possibility, right? And it is true that China's birth rate has been declining rapidly, but this is in response to increased cost of living and the lingering cultural effect of the one child policy, which was actually only abolished in 2017. So it's been less than 10 years. There's a lot of factors that are going into their declining birth rate. And China is doing a lot to try to resolve this issue. One of the things that they're doing that they did this year, they removed condoms from the list of VAT exempt items. That is an international trade system. It's a tax system. It's a tax on imports. So by being exempt from that tax, your domestic goods are going to be cheaper because they're not transferring the cost of those taxes onto you, the buyer, right? So now that condoms are off of the list and they are transferring the extra cost of importing condoms into them, there's going to be an increase. I think it said the tax rate on condoms is going to increase 13%, which has led some people to theorize that they're actually trying to make it harder for people to avoid pregnancy by making it more difficult to afford birth control, which will only lead to more burdens on women in lower economic demographics. So it's certainly a choice.
Are you kidding me?
They've also raised the retirement age by 3 years because so much of their workforce is aging. And a lot of the issue with the declining birth rate is the impact it's going to have on the workforce in the future. So that's why this is also being extended. And as I mentioned, marriage rates have also declined pretty significantly. In 2024, there were only 6.1 million couples that registered for marriage, whereas in 2023, that number was 7.68 million. So this is a thing that's happening that they need a solution for. And if they can find a culprit in LADs, a lot of people are afraid that they will take drastic measures to address that. Considering the fact that there is a more marked degree of censorship and control within states like China. So that's kind of the fear with how that's going to affect LADs. I don't necessarily think that that's an illegitimate fear. The fact that Infold might have given into political and governmental pressure to cancel Valko, which again, I don't know that that's true. But the fact that they might have, and if they did, it could suggest that they might give into that same kind of pressure to either change Love and Deep Space completely or just get rid of it, which would, of course, also mean that that same pressure would be applied to other Otome games and other things that are marketed towards women to take those away to make us have babies. And like, that sounds dramatic, but it's really not. It's a danger. You in danger, girl. We're all in danger. I thought about this more overnight because I feel like I didn't explain myself very well initially. The reason that I went so in depth about this and why I think it's more of a genuine issue for lads is because the fact that there are rumors within the Chinese fan base that this is what happened to Valko, for me is an indication of the external pressures that women in China are feeling about childbearing. And therefore, I think that we as a global community of lads players should be paying attention to this, because if it's so extreme that they fear someone will interfere with something as mundane as a game, then I think the bigger picture is relevant to us. And so that's why I kind of wanted to really dig into that more, even though it's not something that we can substantiate. I still think it's important to acknowledge um, as a potential problem that is worrying and threatening to women in China and women who play lads in China. So that's why I went more into that. I just wanted to kind of clarify because I felt like that wasn't super clear. So, but I'll get off my soapbox now and we can move on. These are all the reasons that I'm aware of as of the time of writing and filming this video, that they got rid of our wolf, Valko. But in response to the cancellation of Valko, Love and Deep Space fans around the world and in China have started their own counter protests. They're really coming together, sharing petitions. They're unfollowing Infold and the Lads games on social media. They're committing to not log into the game or spend any money in the game, which is a real issue for me because they just started the rerun for Zane's Third Myth and I really, really fucking wanted it. So
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't.
never forget that inside of you there are two wolves, and one of those wolves is named Valko, and he wants to get out. What is it? There's a she-wolf. There's a he-wolf in your closet. Let him out so he can breathe. So that's the end of the video. That's all you really need to know. I hope they bring Valko back so that I have a new companion to fight wanderers with, because I'm getting kind of I'm getting kind of tired of fighting with Raphael, who's my strongest one right now. He's really killing it. He's really doing fantastic. But I really hope that they bring him back. I hope that they don't continue to cow to the complaints that they are getting from a minority of the fan base. And that's the end of this video. I have nothing more to say. If you like this video, if you think I'm funny, then you should like and subscribe. If you don't like this video, then you should not do anything at all. Please don't comment. I'm sensitive. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I would love to see you back here on the Rotten Girl channel. We are going to be reviewing basically all things weeb. I will be talking about otome games, manga, yaoi. I am a fujoshi. Sorry. And like anime, and also just like regular romance books and stuff. So like, don't worry, fret not. There will be also stuff for the non-weebs and the non-fujoshis, but it will always be feminist. And there will always, always be yaoi. Because you know who's going in my yaoi notebook right now? Every single one of the love interests. Because in my headcanon...
Gay!
Anyway, I'm going to finally log off now before I go a little crazy.